Hello, I'm Don Ward. I'm Chief Executive of CIB, and welcome to another episode of CIB in Conversation. Conseil International de Bâtiment, to give us our French name, is the global network for collaboration in research and innovation in the built environment. And welcome to everybody joining us today, wherever you are in the world. This series is all about meeting the personalities and the great leaders and researchers in our sphere around the world. And today I'm delighted to welcome our guest, Chimay Anumba. Now, Chimay is Dean and Professor at the College of Design, Construction and Planning at University of Florida. He's also a Fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering in the UK. And as we record this, it's the week before COP26, the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, UK. And as you'll hear later, I hope some of his research interests are extremely relevant. So this is particularly well timed for this chat today. So Chimay, hello.
Hello, Don. Great to see you again.
Great to see you. Thank you for joining us today. All the way from the University of Florida. I know it's mid-morning there. So how are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's nice and sunny, and we're beginning to get into fall, so it's quite pleasant.
I'm very envious, and some nice temperatures, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, Chimay, in this series, we like to hear, first of all, about our guest backgrounds and, your early career. So how did you get started? I mean, how did you come into the sector of construction and then academia?
Right. Thanks very much, Don. I started out with a degree in building at the University of Jos in Nigeria. And building was a discipline that kind of merged elements of architecture with civil engineering by focusing specifically on buildings. And following that, I worked briefly as a site engineer as well as a design engineer. And then I moved to the UK to do my graduate studies at the University of Leeds, where I did a PhD in civil engineering under the supervision of Dr. Alistair Watson, specializing in computer-aided design. So that's how I got started.
Computative design. What made you decide to do a PhD in the first place, having had the opportunity to go on site? What made you choose the academic route?
I think I was probably influenced by my parents, both of whom were teachers. But then also, I always knew that I wanted to go all the way to a PhD, and in my mind at the time, be done with studying. I did not know there are so many other levels of studies beyond the PhD. But that was what I had in mind. And having gotten into it, I really started to enjoy research, and I found it fascinating.
And what was it particularly about research, or that you found so fascinating, enthralling?
I think at that time the idea of working with computers was very intriguing to me because I did not have much exposure to them in my undergraduate studies. And I felt it was an area that was had a lot of potential and a lot of promise, and I was very keen to get involved. And then as I got more and more involved in it, I found that I found it thrilling to be at the cutting edge of technology and the discovery of new things that could help to change the industry.
And how, with the fascination with computers, how did you see some of the early opportunities as they might apply to construction?
I think that I did not have that wisdom at the time to fully see where it would all lead to. What I did find was that I could see some of the incremental steps. So when I did my work, we're looking at having a bit more structure to the underlying data that were the back of CAD systems. And so it will be what you could call the forerunner to more object-based CAD. And so the system that I ended up developing had us putting the structure behind simple geographical elements like lines, such that you would know that if you selected a pair of lines, the system would understand that this was a wall, not just a pair of lines. So it was the very early days of that. And that I found really fascinating, because it meant that when you're manipulating the CAD drawing, you're not just manipulating lines, you're actually manipulating walls. And so it was great to see some of that thinking find its way into CAD systems that subsequently came on the scene.
It's fascinating to think that the modern people, the modern growth of BIM, you know, and it's fascinating to hear the sort of some of the early roots of how that all started. Can you give us a highlight from those early years? You know, or perhaps any advice, Chimay, for new PhD students just starting on their way? What words of wisdom would you pass on to them?
I think the biggest thing is really not to be intimidated by what you see around you, but to take the bull by the horns and work really hard and try to understand the tools available and what you can do with them. Because prior to starting the PhD in computer-aided design, I'd never really used a computer. And so, but my supervisor was very supportive, but he also did throw me in at the deep end a few times and that taught me that I really needed to focus and understand what needed to be done. And so, but the key is not to be intimidated and not to give up easily, because if you persevere, you get a level of understanding that helps you push through. And research is not for the faint-hearted. You'll get a number of knocks, but it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And you have to be able to motivate yourself and get yourself through those tough times.
Well, thank goodness you did manage to persevere and get through Chimay, you know, one of those sliding doors moments, who knows. Then, so you got to the end of your PhD. What was the next decision that you made in your career?
The next decision was really where to go. And I knew that although I'd worked briefly in Nigeria, I did not have significant industry experience. And so I resolved to focus on getting some industry experience and also getting professionally qualified. And so I applied primarily for non-academic jobs. And I was employed by Curtins Consulting Engineers in Leeds, where I worked for a little over 3 years on a wide range of civil and structural engineering projects. And in that time, I managed to become professionally qualified in all of the key professional bodies that I was involved with. So starting with the Institution of Structural Engineers, the Institution of Civil Engineers, as well as the Chartered Institute of Building. And so once I'd got all of those out of the way, I decided, well, I really wanted to go back to academia to teach. And that was what I then moved on to.
And I don't know too many people who successfully qualify with 3 different professional institutions. How did you manage that? You know, for a lot of people, one institution is hard work.
I think one of it was really having the focus that this is what I wanted to do. The second was having a highly supportive company in Curtins, because they provided me with the opportunity and the support to gain the experience I needed and then also to take the necessary professional exams. My senior engineer was particularly helpful. He had just taken the structures exam, for example, and that was at the time had a very, very low pass rate. And he was kind enough to pass on his notes to me, which I've subsequently passed down, I've added to them and passed down to others. And so it was just a combination of being focused, working hard, but then also having the support from the company that I work for and my senior colleagues, and that helped tremendously.
And I mean, just as a sort of diversion from your career for a minute, but have you stayed engaged with the professional bodies?
I have stayed engaged with the professional bodies. I'm still involved with the Institution of Structural Engineers, ICE, and I remained involved. I became fellows of all of those three institutions, but I ended up leaving the CIOB a few years ago because once I'd moved to the US, there wasn't much CIOB activity over here.
Right.
And so I wasn't really getting any benefit, and I felt there really wasn't much to continue to pay the dues every year.
Well, congratulations on achieving 3 fellowships. As I said earlier, not many people achieve 1, so that's particularly impressive. And I'm sorry you haven't persisted with the CIOB, but I'm sure they would love to grow their activity in the United States. So you never know. So let's get back to your career. There you were. So you'd spent 3 years in the industry as a consulting engineer, and you decided to return to academia.
Yes.
How did you make that step?
So about the time I was starting to look, an opportunity opened up at the University of Teesside in Middlesbrough. And so I was employed there, and I worked there for, I think, about 5 years as a senior lecturer in civil engineering. And then I was headhunted to move to Loughorough University as a reader in computer-aided engineering.
So you continued your specialism around computative engineering, I beg your pardon. Yeah. At this stage, we might call you an early career researcher then. And as you know, CIB has a very strong global network of ECRs that we like to encourage and help advance their careers as much as possible. So just as I asked you for advice for PhD students earlier, what would you say to early career researchers?
For early career researchers, again, I'll repeat what I'd said to PhD students about having a focal point, to be focused and to work hard. There really is no substitute for hard work. But also you need to avoid a number of distractions. People tend to get distracted by every new and shiny thing that comes up without carefully evaluating what the core deliverables are. So what I often say to junior colleagues here is identify what is needed to get you to the next level and focus on those. Because people do a lot of things that are good in themselves, but do not necessarily help them to advance. And then when they put themselves up for promotion, they wonder why they were not promoted. Well, what were the metrics for promotion in your field and in your university? Did you tick all of those boxes? Or were you doing a lot of busy work that sounded interesting, but do not actually contribute to what the promotion criteria are?
Well, very sound advice, that seems to me. So at Loughborough, as you matured, as it were, from an early career researcher and achieved, you became a professor there, is that right? Yes,
I became a professor at Loughborough in 2000. Yes.
Also in the field of computative engineering and IT and construction?
Yes, my title was Professor of Construction Engineering and Informatics at Loughorough.
Very, very good. And yet here you are today at Florida. So how did you make that jump?
So it's been quite a while. First, during my time at Loughborough, I spent an academic year at the University of Florida as on sabbatical. And then subsequently, I then ended up at Pennsylvania State University as department head for architectural engineering. And this was January 2008 that I started at Penn State. So I was at Penn State for about 8.5 years. And then the position at Florida came up, and then they approached me, and I started here in August 2016.
And as I mentioned earlier, you're dean of the college there. So how do you balance your management and leadership responsibilities with continuing to keep a research focus?
I would say with great difficulty. No, it really is very challenging to maintain an active research portfolio while having a significant administrative responsibility. But I think, again, if it's something you really want to do and you're inclined to do, then you'll try to make time for it. Thankfully, I have a very understanding family that allows me to to do this. But it's something that I've always wanted to do. I do want to remain research active, but I have had to scale down significantly my research activities. But then and the reason I want to remain research active is mainly twofold. One is I do want to act as I do want to lead by example to the rest of my academic staff and faculty to show we really do want to do this.
Yeah.
But then also I try to mentor some of the younger faculty by working with them and bringing them into some of my projects. And that helps them to understand what it takes to get new grants, what it takes to appropriately advise, supervise PhD students and master's students.
Well, terrific motivation, if I might say so. Well, that brings us nicely onto your specialist research areas then. So what are you currently working on, Chimay? What would you currently describe as your area or areas of interest and expertise?
Right. So over the years, I've done a lot of different things, all related to the use of computing in design and construction. More recently, I've been focusing on what is generally referred to as cyber-physical systems, but then also a highly related concept of digital twins. And we've had a lot of work going on in that area. My current PhD student working on digital twins is looking at how to apply it to healthcare facilities management. And that's a very interesting area because there are so many things that go on in healthcare facilities. Yeah. And then another area of interest is the area of built environment resilience. And I've not had as much time to work more directly in that area, but I have created a new research institute here at the University of Florida, which we call FIBER. And FIBER stands for Florida Institute for Built Environment Resilience. And we have hired 7 academic staff to work in that area.
Oh, that's quite a big institute.
It is big and growing. So those 7 faculty have now hired about 5 postdoctoral researchers and close to 20 doctoral students. So it is growing very rapidly, and they're looking at a whole range of topics associated with resilience.
And how did you make that bridge? I could see how your other themes, cyber physical systems, digital twins, they're all building on your original expertise around computational engineering. How do you jump? How do you move from there to built environment resilience?
I think when I came, I had some startup funds from the university, and I was trying to figure out what is the best field in which to apply this to have an impact, but also leverage the collective expertise across the college, all the different departments and schools within the college. And this seemed to be an area of growing interest, but also we already had a number of faculty that have significant expertise. The other side of it is the fact that in many respects, the state of Florida is regarded as ground zero for climate change impacts. And so we have growing frequency and severity of hurricanes. We have rising sea levels that affect pretty much all of the coastline of the state of Florida. And so it is something that that if we're able to make an impact would contribute specifically to the state of Florida, but then also to a lot of coastal cities and more broadly to on a global scale.
That's a very, very clear and powerful explanation, Chimay. It's obvious, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So why is that area so important to other CIB members, but and the wider world? How would you communicate the importance of that field of research?
I think the field of resilience is really important wherever you are as part of the CIB community. Because as we move forward and we continue to deal with the challenges of global sustainability and climate change impacts, we need to come up with solutions that as built environment professionals contribute to protecting lives, but then also creating a built environment and infrastructure that can better preserve way of living. And so it's a very important area. And we do have significant tools, both digital and otherwise, that can be brought to bear to help to ensure that we actually contribute to solving this problem.
And you mentioned there the impact of climate. What about, as we speak, it's autumn, fall 2021. So we may be coming to the end of a pretty tough 18 months or so of the global pandemic. So what about resilience? What have you learned, or has there been any impact in your area from the COVID-19 pandemic? And resilience in that respect? Is that an area you look at?
It is an area. In fact, one of the faculty we have within the Fiber Institute is really looking at resilience of healthcare facilities, and also has started to look at basically how do we design the built environment to withstand the impact of pandemics such as COVID. Because there are lots of things we can do with ventilation systems and a number of other areas in terms of managing the flow of people through buildings as well as through other venues that have congregate settings that bring people together. So we have people that are looking at those sorts of areas. But as you can imagine, working in that area requires collaboration with a number of other disciplines. And so she's beginning to talk to epidemiologists about the spread of disease. She's also talking to healthcare professionals in other disciplines. And also sociologists in terms of how people behave in certain settings. And so that is really what I find fascinating with looking at a topic like resilience, because it brings together a broad range of disciplines, and I find that the most exciting research is that is done at the confluence of disciplines. It actually is the most exciting, but also in many cases the most impactful.
And it might be too early to say, as we said, as we're talking, it's 18 months really since the onset of the pandemic. But are any sort of early findings or early insights which you'd like to share with us?
I think the main insights really from my point of view are that we do need to have a focus on how do we protect the most vulnerable in society. How do we ensure that we apply the appropriate protocols? We do not politicize these things. And as built environment professionals, that we actually figure out how to give appropriate advice to the relevant policy-making bodies to make the right decisions.
Well, Chimay, that's a nice segue into my final question, really, because as you know, I think we, excuse me, we like to end these conversations by asking you about a top opportunity. So what I mean by that is the opportunity or the challenge that you'd like global policymakers to be addressing or to focus on. Well timed, because next week sees the start of the UN Climate Change Conference, COP26. So what would be your message to the global leaders that are going to be at that conference?
My main message is really to focus on resilience and how we can better deal with the challenges posed by the climate change. But in doing that, to also look at how we address the needs of the most vulnerable population groups in the world. There are lots of areas of the world that are ravaged by poverty and do not have the means to appropriately respond to some of these challenges. And so we need to look at how we can address those and provide them with the resources to better survive these challenges.
Well, Chimay, I can't think of anyone better placed to provide them with that advice. So let me thank you for your time today in CIB in conversation. It's been an absolute joy. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And it's been fantastic learning how you got where you are, really, about your early career and your motivations. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Dan.
I think just before we go, I did forget to ask you. So I must take the opportunity to ask for a plug for CIB. So how did what's been your involvement with CIB over the years, and where have you experienced the value of that?
So I've been involved with CIB over the years, particularly the CIB W78, focusing on IT in construction. I've attended events with other CIB working commissions, notably those associated with construction management, health and safety. And I did start a task group on concurrent engineering in construction. And so the value of CIB really has been there throughout my career, and I really enjoyed the opportunity to network with other researchers around the world. And I've learned a lot just from participating in a lot of these events. And I think that I would certainly encourage any young researchers to get involved in any of the topic areas. And then it also provides opportunities for leadership in a technical discipline area. And that is very valuable as young researchers come through the ranks.
And well, fantastic. Thank you very much indeed for that promotion. And one final pitch, if I may ask you, next year, June 2022, 28th to the 30th of June. We hope that the CIB community will all be able to gather in Melbourne, Australia, hosted by RMIT University, and for the World Building Congress 2022, which is our big conference every 3 years. Now, I can exclusively reveal, are lined up to be likely to be giving a keynote address at that Congress. So I don't expect to give away any secrets, Chimay, on what you might be talking about. But give us the pitch for why people should come to Melbourne to hear you.
Well, to start off with, Melbourne is one of my favorite cities in the world. I really do enjoy being in Melbourne. But I think on the more technical side, there are going to be a lot of working commissions from different parts of CIB that will be there. And whether you're there in person or virtually, I think it's going to be a great learning experience from all of the researchers from around the world that will be presenting at that event. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. And I don't know if you'd agree, but I get the sense that because of the last 18 months and lockdowns and lots of virtual conferences, there's an awful lot of people looking forward and hoping, fingers crossed, that actually we can be face-to-face for this conference. I
really do hope that we can all meet face-to-face. The technology and the virtual meetings have their place, but I do think there really is no substitute for meeting in person.
Well, with that, Chimay, thank you so much indeed. I really appreciate your time today. It's been fascinating listening to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dan.
So to our audience, I would just say, for more information on World Building Congress 2022, on our ECR, Early Career Researcher Network, on our student chapters around the world, on Chimay's work, and or for details of any other part of our work, please just see our website shown here on the screen. And that's the end of this edition of CIB in Conversation. Time has flown really fast talking to Chimay. So thank you to him. I'm Don Ward, and goodbye for now from CIB. Thank you.